got some problems that you wanna solve? Then let's chat. That job getting on your nerves? Then let's chat. Girl, you know I can relate, so let's chat. Cause I'ma tell you what the bottom line is.
I'ma tell you what the bottom line is. I'ma tell you what the bottom line is. I'ma tell you what the bottom.
It's your girl Cece. I'm your hostess with the mostest.
I'ma tell you what the bottom line is.
Hey everybody, it's your girl Cece, the hostess with the mostest, back here for another episode of The Bottom Line Is. And today's guest is Dr. Christine Cosby-Gaither, and she has started an organization called A Stroke of Grace. And she herself is a stroke survivor. And that's what we're going to get into today, is talking about, strokes in the Black community, the myths that come around it and how you can essentially prevent it. And so we're going to get all into that. So I encourage you to stay tuned, because even if you're not experiencing it, the things that you can learn in this episode, you can share with another family member, and just let that education keep on going like a domino effect, a positive domino effect. So without further ado, I'm going to let Dr. Christine introduce herself and talk to you about her journey. Dr. Christine?
Yes. Well, hey, first of all, thank you so very much. I'm so excited about joining you today and being a guest on this episode. And I will tell you, this has been a journey. I know we've talked offline, and this has been a journey. And I will say this started, first of all, just close your eyes and just imagine something. Imagine being a woman, a Black woman who is 35 years old, who has been married for 4 years, has a 2-year-old at home just trotting around. And then one night you have some family members over, and they, all of a sudden, you just feel like you have the worst headache of your life. So, you said, well, it's at night, it's 9 o'clock at night. So, what I'm going to do is just jump in the bathtub really quick, and then I'm going to go to bed and lay down. And the next morning you lay down thinking your headache, you take some medicine and you think your headache's going to go away. And the next morning at 4:45 a.m., you wake up with the urge to use the restroom, only to find or to discover when you use the restroom. When you get out of bed to use the restroom, you just collapse. And from that moment, you're rushed to the hospital, and the first hospital stated that you were only given a 5% chance of living. So you decided, your husband and your parents decide they're going to send you to another hospital. You go to that other hospital, and you're in a coma for days. And then finally, when you wake up, you realize that, hey, life is just different. Life is different. All of a sudden, you're trying to move your arms, trying to move your legs, can't move, can't talk, can't swallow, can't see because you're blind, can't do it. That was myself. That was my journey when I was 35 years old. And so after during that situation, I was blind, I was paralyzed on my left-hand side, couldn't walk, couldn't talk, couldn't eat. And one of the biggest things is, in order for me to be able to leave the ICU and leave the hospital, I had to learn how to swallow. So imagine you've been swallowing your entire life. You're 35 years old, and now all of a sudden you can't swallow. I mean, when was the last time you thought about having to actually swallow? But you couldn't swallow. But that was something that I had to they had to teach me to do again in order for me to leave the ICU. So fast forward there, I was there once, and I finally was able to learn how to swallow. And you have to swallow on an X-ray. So not just swallowing is to swallow your food, but swallowing so therefore they can get a picture of it at the same exact time to make sure that your food and your drink or whatever you're doing is not going into your lungs, it's going into your stomach. So finally I passed my swallow test, and that gave me, I was able to go to rehab. inpatient rehab, and between inpatient rehab and also outpatient rehab, I was there for about 18 months. So I spent a lot of time in a rehab in the hospital system, in the healthcare system. And I realized one of the things when I was there that there was not anyone who looked like me. And then not only that, there was not just in like as race, me being a black woman, but I was 35 years old. Most of the individuals who were there were older white individuals, and they were of the age of 70. So there was a big disconnect as far as, hey, you're there for so long, but it's hard to quote unquote befriend individuals because you just had nothing in common with them. They looked at me as their grandchildren. So, and my daughter, my 2-year-old, as their great grandchild. But um, just that whole journey taught me so much, and it taught me, hey, I'm here. I was saved for a reason. And one of the things I want to do is I want to give back. So I know we're going to talk a little bit more about the organization a little bit, but that's a little bit about my story. And I will tell you also, because one of the things you discussed is about your mental capacity. Now, please understand, when after you suffered a stroke, one of the things that you have that you go through is a lot of your memory loss. Still to this day, I have a lot of memory loss. And you have to constantly work on your memory to try to make sure that you don't miss appointments, you don't miss meetings. I set alarms, you do various things to try to keep your memory. But one of the biggest things that sticks out to me is that after I suffered my stroke, I did not remember that I even had a child. I remembered my husband because he was there. So I was able to see him, but I did not remember I had a child. And they kept it, the hospital, my family decided to keep that from me for 3 months. So for 3 months, I had no idea that a child even existed. I didn't remember being pregnant, didn't remember delivering, didn't remember any of that. And they said that they did that intentionally. My parents did not remind me intentionally because they wanted me to focus on trying to get myself back together, trying to work hard every day in rehab, trying to learn how to walk and talk. And because they said if I would have known that I had a child, I would have been more focused on her, my 2-year-old, than on myself, on trying to get better. So therefore, they did not tell me. So that was one of the things I also learned also. So much about myself and so much about this journey is that, it's just so many things where even today, there's so many things that I just don't remember. It's like I can say, okay, I remember going to that amusement park. I can because I was an avid roller coaster rider. And I remember going to an amusement park, but then there is a part where my brain has just cut out, where I can't remember probably 7 or 8 months after that. And then I can remember something else, but I can't remember exactly what happened during that time. So whether that's a travel situation where there is you getting on the airplane, whether that's like there's so many things, and my short-term memory is probably better than my long-term memory. And that's something that I still to this day work on. I do a lot of brain exercises. But that's a little bit about my journey and why, how I got to this moment.
No, thank you for sharing that. I wanted to ask, did they say why, or what the cause may have been for your stroke, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, so honestly, to this day, they still don't know. And that was the hardest part because they did not know exactly why I suffered a stroke. Um, it wasn't like someone in my family had ever done it before. It wasn't hereditary. I have no idea to this point, to this day. So instead of me every day being depressed, wondering and questioning, is this going to happen to me again today? Why did this happen? Or continue to focus on it. That's one of the reasons why I had to move and pivot in another direction, because me not knowing was taking its toll on me. So still to this moment, I don't know. I do know that I had a ischemic stroke, which is a blood clot. So I had a blood clot in the back of my brain and then also in the front of my brain. At the same time, I had a blood clot. So I did not have a hemorrhagic stroke, which is like a brain bleed. But so I did have a ischemic stroke, but I do not know the reason for it.
No, I got you. And I think I had shared with you that my grandmother, when she had her stroke, she had the bleeding of the brain. She had a narrowing of her carotid artery. So, but no, I get you and understand about not trying to get too much in the weeds and more so practicing, excuse me, on being proactive and, getting yourself better than focusing on the woulda, coulda, shouldas. Because I think a lot of us, unfortunately, get caught up into that, and that slows us down
Yes, I agree.
for sure.
I agree.
And so, let me ask you. So, when you and I had talked, we talked about blacks in the community that experience strokes, and then as you also highlighted in discussing your journey about being 35, being so young and experiencing that. I mean, why do you think that is that the younger community now, strokes are hitting us? Healthcare issues are hitting us so young at this point in time.
Well, first of all, I want to say the reason why started researching is because honestly, I mean, selfishly, I hate to say this, but selfishly, I was trying to learn more about myself. I was trying to figure out exactly why did I have them? What did I do? I mean, like, I was just so blown away that this could happen to me. And I was young. I just said, there was a lot of individuals who are my age who didn't even, they feel like they don't even need health insurance. Um, because they feel like, hey, we're young and we'll just wait until we get 50 or, you know. Um, but needless to say, when I researched the statistics, it was just baffling to me that blacks are twice as likely than their non-Hispanic white counterparts to suffer a stroke. Period. No matter what the age is. And that could even be, because strokes happen. There was on my floor when I was in rehab, that I was on a peds floor. So half of my floor were stroke survivors who were under the age of 10. So it's not like it's something that cannot happen to, it happens to anyone. It's just not talked about. And normally we don't hear that. But going back to your question, as far as young, because there has been an increase um, in young stroke survivors, and maybe are in young stroke victims also. And maybe it could be that I really didn't, hone in on it until I had this situation happen to me. So maybe this is something that's always happened. But I will tell you that ever since then, I have gotten so many calls from different people. Um, our youngest person that's a part of the group, and we'll talk about the organization I run, is 22. And you're talking about at the age of 22, being a woman, so many things change. Now, I will tell you, there has been very rarely can you like have children after you suffer a stroke, depending on what kind of stroke you had. So after I had my stroke, I could not have any more children. And that is because I had blood clots. So, and when you have children, you need to be able to clot. Um, so even though they don't know what happened or why it happened, they told me that whatever you do, no more kids. So I think about some of the individuals I support, but that young lady I spoke to who's 22 years old, they told her the same thing. So what does it look like now? She's 22. You had your hopes up to graduate from college, get married, and have kids. And now all of a sudden you can have children because you suffer this stroke and no one knows why. So I hear so many stories like that, and I wanted to do something, to use my influence, to use my drive, to use my skills in order to give back. Because one of the things once I get on something, I don't let up. I like to, I research and try to figure out why, and one of the, I've always wanted to give back. And that was my way of giving back, because I feel like, hey, I was just spared because, like I said, I was only given a 5% chance of living. When you have a 95%, when you're 5% against 95%, a lot of things, when you go back and you think about that, a lot of things change. And in your mindset, you realize that, hey, I don't have time for foolishness. I don't have time. I'm very focused with what I do because I understand 95 versus 5.
Mm-hmm.
I do absolutely understand that. So I never want to take advantage or anything of that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, for sure. And so that just made me think, to circle back into the emotional toll. I mean, as you went through these different stages, from the onset of it and then coming out of the coma to now being in rehab to getting back home, if you can kind of talk about the emotional challenges, if you will, that came through that, and maybe some things that help you to cope with those emotional or mental, challenges that you faced during this journey.
So I will, no, I will say emotionally, that was probably one of the hardest things. Your mental and your emotion is hard because you just don't know what to think. Eventually, you start to realize, and things, as your brain begins to heal, you start to remember things of the past. Like, I am someone, if you would have known me prior to my stroke, you would have known that, hey, Christine is going to wear high heels every day. That was my thing. I'm a shoe girl. Okay.
Okay.
But after I suffered my stroke, when I was learning how to walk, you no longer have your balance. Your equilibrium, everything is off. So I had to give away all of my heels. And now I have to do flats. And I will still say, I try to get cute flats, but it's not like 6-inch heels, And I will tell you, emotionally, on that day when I had to really take the time, because I did not want someone else to do it. I said, because this is my journey, this is my story, and I wanted that to be a part of my story, and I want to lean in and feel everything. So I remember getting that black garbage bag and literally putting all my heels in a bag in order for me to be able to donate them to someone. I remember that. And emotionally, it takes a toll on you because you constantly question why, but then I turn that around and I say, why not?
Mm.
Because at this point, I will say, I am here for a reason. Why not? Why not give these things away? Why not be a blessing to someone else? Why not? And then also mentally, it's just, I will tell you that mentally, this journey is hard. And I never truly understood depression until I suffered this stroke. Depression is something that it's real. And I will tell you, there's already some things, just because your body is going through so much, there's already things that you're having to deal with emotionally, and mentally. But the things you can't do physically, such as, like, we take for granted. My washer and dryer was in my basement. Well, once you learn how to walk, you can't walk up and down the steps. So, when you walk up and down the step trying to carry a laundry basket, so mentally just having to, hey, ask my husband or ask someone, hey, I want to wash clothes, but can you take this basket down? Whereas you used to be independent and you used to be able to do that yourself. But now that's not something that I can do because in order for me to walk down the steps, I got to have a rail. I got to hold. So I can't hold a rail and hold a clothes basket. It's not going to happen. So, or even still to this day, if I'm home alone and I have to do it, I have to walk down the steps by myself. I mean, walk down the steps backwards down the steps because I can't go down the steps forward, frontwards. So there's so many things with that. And as we talk about the organization, I know we're going to get into that. That's one of the reasons why I did this, because I truly believe that an idle mind is the devil's playground.
Agreed.
And I believe that when you are not doing anything and when you're sitting and not, then the devil gets in your head and starts starts telling you various things. Like I remember, I'll never forget when I was standing in church. I can't remember. It wasn't my church. I was somewhere else. I was at another church in the back row. And I literally had a vision of committing suicide. That scared me to the point where I said, you know what? I got to get busy. I got to do something. And that's one of the reasons why I really started to take the organization serious, because at first it was just, a group of friends. But I really started taking it serious because I got scared. And so I said, no, I got to do something more. I got to do something else.
No, and I'm glad that you highlighted that. And I want to just speak on a couple of things, the why. I think anytime something goes on in our life, that's our first word is why, or why me. And I think your approach was amazing. The why not, because sometimes we go through these challenges and it's a purpose at the end. We might not understand it in the beginning or why we're going through it, but there is a purpose and a reason at the end of that particular season. So I applaud you for, taking that step and, motivating yourself to get better for you, your family, and everybody. And that's, I'm no expert on, suicide or anything like that. However, I think it's important too to also highlight that, sometimes we feel alone when we're going through things because we want to be so independent. And when we're, our senses are taken away or our abilities to do all these daily functions are taken away, it's very hard on the mental because now you're having to adapt to a new normal and reach out to people. And that's a lot. People think that when they're not in that predicament, they're like, well, why don't you just ask for help? That's nothing, but when you're actually used to doing something and asking for help, that's a whole different, really different level of emotions to go through and being okay with doing that. So, I applaud you with that. And I know that it was hard, and I couldn't sit up here and say that I know specifically what that's like, but I know that was a huge step for you in doing that. So we've kind of alluded to the organization a little bit. So if you want to talk a bit about your organization, the name of it, and your purpose or mission of the organization.
So yes, so the organization that I founded, and I will tell you all of this in just kind of tying it all together, but all of this started out of my depression. Because I said I need to get busy. I need to do something. And at that time, we had started. My friend, I had found some different friends online when we started these little, I call them quote unquote focus groups, where we literally got together every day, and we were all Black stroke survivors, and we were young stroke survivors over the country, and we got together. And we would do things to just motivate each other, to encourage each other, to do whatever, because this journey is hard and it's lonely. So we did that. And then one of my friends in Houston said, you're really good at this. And I know you have some business background. You should really start an organization. So therefore I said, no, I'm not going to do it. But then COVID happened. And I said, you know what? Why not? I'll go ahead and do that. So I started an organization. It's called A Stroke of Ghosts. The Stroke of Grace is a nonprofit organization, but we support Black stroke survivors. And we also do stroke prevention education in Black communities. And why do I say stroke prevention education? That's important because strokes are 80% preventable. That's one of those research things I found out after I got out of the out of the hospital, that strokes are 80% preventable, but you cannot prevent them unless you are educated to know the signs and symptoms and things to look for in order to prevent that. So I started this organization. It's called A Stroke of Grace. And A Stroke of Grace is currently we're now in 18 different states, working in different cities, just supporting Black stroke survivors. Majority of our Black stroke survivors are between the ages of 33 and 65, but we have no age. I mean, we have some people who are in their 80s who support us. And like I said, the youngest part of our person in our organization is 22. So we are just there. We come together. We have monthly meetup, support groups. So therefore we can talk through each other and talk about what we're feeling, because this situation is lonely. And it is so good for us to be in community with each other. So therefore, it is something that we do on a monthly basis on the second Saturday of every month at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We all get together virtually, and we get together and want to just share on different topics. This past I think we've done something on physical limitations after stroke, and every month we have different topics, and a lot of times we have various individuals, either if it's a caregiver, if it's a caregiver expert, if it is a neurologist, because all of us have various, and it's interesting because a lot of us have the same neurologist. It's interesting,
Oh, wow.
especially here in like the Kentucky. Yeah, we have the same neurologist, so we all are able to share in that also. And then we talk about various things, healthcare tips, tools. How do you connect in things with their provider? Because a lot of people, they go into the doctor's office but do not know how to really truly ask the right questions in order to be a true advocate for themselves. So we talk about various things like that. We have events, we have dinners. We'll do, like for holidays, like a Thanksgiving dinner, or we have things. If you're locally, if you can come in, and we get together just to be a community, because it's nothing like being with someone who is like you, who understands. Because throughout this journey, we talk to our parents, we talk to our husband, we talk to our kids, but honestly, they don't understand until you really know that, hey, you got someone who understands. It's the simple things, it's small things. After you suffer a stroke, there's so many things you cannot do. And like I said before, I was an avid roller coaster rider. And if I would have known that the last time I was on a roller coaster was going to be my last time, I probably would have been on for like 12 hours. Like, it's crazy. So, but not only that, the small things we take for granted, such as a hot tub. You can no longer get in a hot tub. Hot baths. Some you like to take hot bubble baths or something. Can't do that because it elevates your temperature. The temperature elevates your blood pressure, and it could cause you to possibly fall out or pass out. So there's so much you can't do. I know we talked about me asking for help and things we take for granted, but driving, it's such things like driving, trying to get in the car, to drive. It took me 2 years to learn how to drive again. And even still to this day, I have a lot of issues because, like I said, I was blind. So I have a lot of issues with vision. So getting over our parallel park, like still to this day, I cannot parallel park. I'll get everywhere early. So therefore I can just pull into a parking spot, because if I have to parallel park, I'm anxious. I get very anxious if I have to parallel park. If I have to parallel park out of the car and call somebody and ask them to come parallel park for me, because I can't do it because of my vision, my peripheral vision doesn't allow me to do that. So there, needless to say, going back to the Stroke of Grace, we are also an organization. We, like I said, we're in 18 different states when we do various get-togethers, meet and greets from around the country. And then also we do a lot of stroke prevention education. We do it in a lot of faith-based institutions, nursing homes, libraries, schools. Anyone who wants to know, that be one where I just do not want anyone to go through what I went through. If I can help one person prevent from having a stroke, I want to do that. So, in addition to me trying to do whatever I can to try to take best of myself, because once you suffer a stroke, you are 70%. You have a 7% chance of suffering a second stroke in 5 years. I am just a little bit, past that. So I'm good. I'm not going to say I'm good. I'm grateful. Good. At the same time, I'm still doing the work in order to try a secondary stroke for myself also.
So, I think that you starting that agency, that community is amazing. And people really undervalue the need for a community. And that's part of, depression too, when you're going through something life changing. If you don't have others around you in that support system, your family can only do so much, and support, because they don't understand, specifically, like you said, what you're going through, and it is lonely. So I think really, like I said, a lot of us don't like to reach out for help, right? The human regular person doesn't. Let's just be honest. But, I think that when people, force themselves into having that, talking to someone that's like them, I think it just, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it just really lightens them the load, if you will, just to know that I'm really not alone. Like I thought I was the only one going through this. And now there's others that are going through this that in fact could tell me tips about, like you said, about what to ask at the doctor's office, or mobility tips and things of that nature. And community is just really important. I just wanted to, just second that as well. And that doesn't, that's for any age. Having community with anything that you're going through is very important. So you talked about your organization doing prevention tips. So I wanted to get into that. I know you highlighted some different, numbers and statistics as well. And let's kind of get into that a little bit more. What would you say to our viewers would be some of the things that we can do in our daily life to perhaps prevent strokes?
So yes, I will say there's two things I wanted. There's two things that I always tout everywhere I go, and that is, first of all, know your numbers. And what I mean by that is know your blood pressure numbers. Now, please understand, your blood pressure changes daily. So, because a lot of times we host blood pressure drives.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had people to come to me and say, I checked my blood pressure last week. Well, just because you checked it last week don't mean that it's something crazy, astronomical today.
Mm-hmm.
You have got to know your number. Please know your numbers. I understand the blood pressure cuffs, they can be uncomfortable 30 seconds, but I'm telling you, that is something that can potentially save your life. So I always say, know your numbers. That is the first thing. And there is an acronym called B FAST. B stands for balance. E stands for eyes. So if you're starting to get blind and can't see, or your eyes. F is facial drooping. So meaning that if your face doesn't look symmetrical and all of a sudden it looks torn up and your one side is drawn up, that's your face. A is arms. When you put your hand straight out in front of you, your arms should be able to be the same. If one of them you can't get it up there with the other one,
Yeah.
that is, you need to figure out, that's something to think through also. Yes. S is speech. So if for whatever reason, if all of a sudden I'm talking and then everything starts to become gibberish, then that is a sign that T is time. Because in stroke, time is everything. B fast. Balance, eyes. F is facial drooping. A, arms. S, speech. T, time to call 911. Because if you're suffering any of those symptoms, you need to get to the hospital because timing is everything. They do have something at the hospital that can potentially reverse the stroke, so you do not have all of the elements. You don't have, you may not be paralyzed. There's so many things that can happen, but you got to get to the hospital in time because they can only do that within so many times, so many, like the first 3 hours. And actually, if you can get it done in the first hour, it's called the golden hour. I've researched it's called the golden hour. And the first 60 minutes are the most critical. So I try to tell, if you've had anyone or you see anyone who's suffering any of those signs and symptoms, please, please, please call 911, get to the hospital, because it might be something that's minor. It may not be a stroke. It may not be, but I would rather be safe than sorry. So don't just for me, I will say, and that's one of the things I've dealt with also, because I know that those are the signs and symptoms, but guess what? I did not have any of those signs or symptoms prior to my stroke. I did have a headache. So the thing is that, sometimes they can be formed in a different area. I thought it was just a headache that I had. So, and I will tell you, the majority of individuals that I spoke with, who I speak to, who have had and suffered a stroke, we all have a common headache. And I will tell you, your head is not supposed to hurt. That is not something, I've talked to individuals where they said, hey, my head has been hurting for a week. Well, you need to go talk to someone, because that's not normal. It's not normal for us to walk around with a headache all day, every day, weeks on at a time. It's not supposed to be like this. Something's happening, especially if you've taken Tylenol or you've taken something and it's not doing anything. You need to speak to someone because something's not right. So those are the signs and symptoms that I mostly tout, knowing your number. And then everywhere I go is talking about be fast.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. And I think you said this earlier on too, as when we first started, was a lot of people, especially young adults, they do not have doctors because of the cost of healthcare, or any other reason potentially, and that's very important. And for me as HR, I can't tell you how many employees I've talked to them, like you got to go to your doctor and get clearance or whatever the case may be, and they're like, I don't have a doctor, I have to go to urgent care. A lot of us, unfortunately, we act in regards to our health when things are wrong. We don't do a lot of prevention. And I can say for myself, taking care of my great grandmother and my grandmother has caused me to make sure that, not go crazy over my health, but to be proactive, so I don't have, any issues that could potentially be hereditary, or just being ahead of the game is what I call it. And, talking with my doctors, but it's very important to at least have a primary care doctor. And as you said, knowing your numbers and, getting your blood work, because things like your cholesterol can also, help, looking at that can understand, well, am I at risk or what's going on? Because people don't think about the cholesterol, the blood flow with the arteries, and all these things, because unfortunately, we're not educated. It's not, you don't get taught this kind of stuff in school. Again, you don't get taught these things until something goes wrong. And it's a hard dynamic. And I know the doctors always tell me, to take 2 weeks worth of blood pressures, for my grandmother. So that way you can see a trend. And like you said, taking a blood pressure is 30 seconds or less. It's not that hard. And I see so many people when I go to, let's say, Walmart, and they're checking their blood pressure there. And that's fine, checking it when things are wrong, but you should be proactive. And I say that to my mother all the time when she says, I got a headache. My first question is, well, did you check your pressure? No. Okay. So how do you know, something is going on? You have to take these steps. I say all that to say that we really should start making an investment in ourselves. You know, your body will be good to you as long as you are good to it. And so I don't know if you have anything to add, but for sure.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with what you just said. Um, and it is, yeah, that insurance, so insurance, and I will tell you, having a primary care, if you can't, because I deal with a lot of rural areas and also that do not have access. Access is an issue. I deal with rural areas and I deal with urban areas, and access is an issue. And there are a lot of times you don't have access to a primary care physician, but just trying, because and now we have telehealth, um, and I was trying to find a doctor that you can, depend on. And even going through telehealth, going through something, just trying to say that you have a doctor who is regularly checking on you and checking to make sure, because you are your biggest advocate.
Mhm.
And if something happens to you, just think about all the individuals that will be affected by something happening to you. So we have a duty to take care of ourselves to the best of our abilities. And I will say that I'm talking to myself also, because that's the one thing. I mean, whether that's rest, whether that's, hey, going to the gym, eating right, whatever that is, we have a duty, to really do and try to take care of the best of us, try to take care of us the best way we can, take as much as we can take care of us.
No, for sure. I totally agree with that. And for our viewers that may be loved ones of someone that is sick or a going through a stroke or dealing with a stroke survivor, what advice would you give to them on how best to support their loved ones that are going through that health challenge?
I guess the first thing I want you to know and also understand is that you are not alone. I do know that this is a hard journey, and I will tell you, first of all, thank you, because I know as stroke survivors, we're difficult individuals. We're difficult people for, you to take care of, just because we're dealing with a brain injury and we realize what our life was prior to this injury. So therefore, we have a lot of things that we have to process, in addition to getting through the actual journey of, physical health. We have a lot of mental things we have to deal with. That, hey, our lives are changed and it's changed forever. Like, and that is a big deal. So I want to first say thank you, because I understand and I know that sometimes we can give caregivers a headache. So I want to say that first of all. But I just want you to know that you are not alone. There is always someone there who can try to, to try to be there to help you, to support you, even if it's not myself, if it's, just find someone that reach out in your local community. There's always stroke support groups, that also accept, that they accept healthcare providers, persons who actually nurses and caretakers and things who work with stroke survivors, and then also caregivers who work with stroke survivors. And then and make sure and get support. And then I will say, do not be afraid of therapy. Therapy is everything. I believe in therapy. I go to therapy. When I was in the hospital, that's the one thing they made us do every Friday. All stroke patients had to see a therapist. There was a therapist that came to your room for you to talk to, because I will tell you, your family may not understand. They'll try to understand, but they may not understand. And it's not their fault. They haven't been through what you've been through. So seek therapy, and seek the right therapist. And don't be afraid that if one therapist does not work out for you and does not understand meet your needs, don't be afraid to keep going to therapy and finding a therapist that meets your needs. Because it can be, it might take 6 months for you to find the right therapist that you feel comfortable with, but you need to go and talk to someone that truly can help you. You don't want to waste your time. on this.
No, for sure. No, and I'm glad that you said that as well in regards to therapy. And I've said this on other episodes that people really, again, I guess undervalue is my word today, but undervalue the positivity that comes out of therapy. I mean, we all have to like let it out, because if we keep it bottled in, that can affect you too, and people don't realize that how much it can affect you. So you have to get it out. And I'm glad that that was something that the rehabilitation center that you went to made that a requirement, because that is important, because you all are going through a life-changing moment. And that's very important to highlight. So thank you for sharing that. Is there any, closing words that you want to, share with anybody else that may be watching before we wrap up?
So yes, before you wrap up, I just want to first thank you for having me again on the show. And then also I just want to stress to everyone that you are not alone. There are so many times, and I want to say that because that was the first thing I felt. I felt like I was the only one going through this. I felt like there was no, until I realized that, hey, let me reach out to some other individual. And I realized that people thought and they understood me because they've been there also.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want you to know that you are not alone, because I know this journey is hard and it's a journey that does not end. It just goes from stage to stage. It's almost like grief. The same thing, there's different stages of grief. Same thing, because you're grieving a life that you used to have.
Yep.
And I will tell you, this is something that's never going to, once you suffer the stroke, you're never going to be the same again. But you can be better. And so you can be better by, I will tell you, by engaging with other individuals, by seeking your community, by truly locking arms with other individuals who are like you, who understands. And I know that it might seem crazy, but it does get better. I didn't believe that when someone told me originally, when this first happened, when I couldn't talk and I could hear, and people would just constantly, or not, not everyone, but like my family, they would constantly share encouraging words. We're going to pull through. You're going to get this. And I didn't believe them, but I am. I feel I'm better. I'm more focused. I will tell you, I enjoy life because I know what it means between a 95% chance of living and a 5% chance of living. So therefore, I make matters count. I do not waste time. I make my matters count. I make my time count, because any given time, I do truly understand that I cannot be here, So I would say, to encourage you, I want to, push you, motivate you to stay connected to things like this podcast. And yeah, just whatever you can do to just stay connected. Connection, community is everything. Having someone that you can connect to is everything.
Yeah. Connection and community. Cece. See, look at that. Well, if people want to know more, because I know we really only scratched the surface here, but if people want to know more about, stroke prevention tips, your journey, and just the progress of your journey and how to connect with you, how can they reach you?
So great. You can always follow us and sign up for our newsletters. And I will say that's the very first way to enter into anything, because it tells you about everything that we have going on. Sign up for our email list. You can do that by going to the website. The website is www.astrokeofgrace.org. And once again, don't forget that A in the front, www.astrokeofgrace.org. You can always email us at hello@astrokeofgrace.com, astrokeofgrace.com, hello@astrokeofgrace.com. We are on Facebook, Instagram also. And on Facebook, we're A Stroke of Grace 1. And then on Instagram, it's just the hashtag is a stroke of grace.
Okay. And we'll have all of those listed here. So, you all can, pause and jot them down. But, on that note, I just want to end with the bottom line is, and I feel like this must be this season, I keep saying, allow yourself some grace, and it just so happens we have the CEO of a stroke of grace here today. So, in anything that you're going through, just take the time to just pause for a moment, embrace what's going on, excuse me, and understand what's going on, and really just, take it one day at a time. Allow yourself that time to recover from what you've gone through emotionally and mentally so that you can, move on in such a positive way. You're not going to get back to your old self. You have to, well, the goal is for you to become a better version of yourself, and just taking your time. And I can't stress that enough. And also reminding you, if you're watching and you don't have a primary care doctor, please go see your primary care doctor. Go ahead and make that appointment. And again, know your numbers. Take the time to really do some research and understand, because although, we don't wish anything ill on anyone, but you never know when something like this could happen to you or someone you're close to. So really take the time to understand what it's about and do the research so that you can make sure that you educate yourself through the journey. So make sure again that you like, comment, and subscribe. If you've gone through a similar situation, please make sure you comment below, share your story, and we